Alright everyone, it's time to point out an obvious truth that increasingly is being ignored by people. I'm not exactly sure why, because it's a lot to do about nothing. That is the concept of gender. This is sort of sparked by Bill Nye saying, oh, well, gender exists along a spectrum, so you can be male or female or somewhere in between. But Bill Nye, as someone who supposedly likes science, should know, of course, you are either male or you are female, including transgendered individuals. They're not necessarily claiming either that they exist on some spectrum. They're just saying, well, I was born in a male body, but I'm female in every other way, and so, I've had sex change therapy and I use hormones and stuff. I would say this. You are either male or female unless you have some major chromosomal disorder. For instance, you have Turner syndrome or something. Someone with Turner syndrome X0, they would present as female. They would typically have feminine roles. They would simply be sterile, and I believe there are other health complications as well. But they're still female. They get the X chromosome. It's essentially whether you do or do not have a Y chromosome that's determining your gender. That chromosome, that sex chromosome, determines it. Y is sort of shaped like a penis, so it just sort of makes sense. It's actually kind of funny when you really think about it. That being said, I would say this. Number one, I don't care what people do. I don't care how they dress. I don't care what roles they have. None of that friggin' matters. Number two, biology is a bit separate from human endeavor. I know that they're twain. For instance, human biology tends to inform, anything anthropogenic in nature, culture, style, and so forth. So there is that. I don't care, number one, because I'm not a moralist. People should be able to do what they want. If somebody is biologically male but wants to wear like a pink tutu and play with dollhouses, who cares? Doesn't bother me, doesn't affect me. Somebody's biologically female, but they're not shaving their armpits and they're wearing the blue jean, they're tomboyish or whatever. Who cares? It's their choice. But there's really the point, is it not? That people keep discussing gender roles or gender norms or something as though biological sex or gender actually matters. It's simply personal choices that people make. The fact that we've conflated them as having something to do with gender, either anthropogenic or biological, doesn't really matter now, does it? For instance, we would look at someone, they're wearing a dress, it's pink, they're skipping around in the daisies and playing with dolls or something. We simply have come culturally to see that as a female thing to do. And so we relegate it to the realm of gender. But it's not really, it's just choices that person happens to make. Take it as it is in its totality and divorce it from other contexts that we have artificially created. And it has nothing to do with what genitals they happen to have. It has nothing to do with the chromosomes that happen to make up their composition. And that would be my ultimate point. And that would be for the left and for the right. The left wants to relegate all of these choices and roles and norms. At the same time that they say, well, that stuff's all artificial, they're admitting to that fact, they still give it importance by dragging it into this gender spectrum crap. There is no gender spectrum. There's a spectrum of roles and choices that people happen to make that we relegate to being related to gender. And that's the truth of the subject. There is no gender spectrum. You are male or you are female. That includes individuals that are transgendered. Now, I would say, for instance, a person's biologically male. They have a sex change operation to approximate a vagina. They're not capable of, having a child, maybe in the future, an ovary transplant or something. I don't know. That gets into a totally different set of ethics and morals. Again, though, I'm preemptively stating I don't care if people do that either. There's one. They have a sex change operation. They're taking hormones. They're taking on traditionally female roles within society. Yeah, I would say that's about the closest approximation to biological femaleness that they can make in a physical sense with the choices that they make. But their chromosomes tell a different tale. They're still male. It doesn't matter. I don't think they should be discriminated against. I don't really care what bathroom they use. Honestly, just make them all unisex. You don't have any problem with that crap. It makes it a lot easier. Or just make all bathrooms unisex and single stall. That is, you don't have these big communist-style collective bathrooms where 5 or 6 people have to piss and shit in proximity to each other. It's disgusting anyway. I don't like public restrooms. The way that they're set up is not substantially more efficient anyway than just providing a few totally separate bathroom areas. Why don't we just do that? You don't have this problem with, oh, what if people get assaulted or something? Who cares? Just reformat the bathrooms. It's not that big a deal. A lot of these, box stores, government agencies, okay, they can spend the extra $10 to change up how they design the bathrooms. It's not going to hurt them. It's not going to do anything to their bottom line. Let the government fund it. Yeah, okay, I'll contribute $5 just to make this argument go away so they don't have to fucking hear about it anymore. To the topic, though, of biology, though, strictly speaking in biologically terms, a person is either male or female. There are 2 genders. Gender is synonymous with sex. You can look it up within the dictionary. What's not synonymous and what gets conflated with the word gender by the left are gender roles, the cultural side, the side that deals with choice. But you don't choose your chromosomes. You don't choose whether you do or do not have the Y chromosome to make you male. That's not a choice that you make. It's the result of the recombination of genetic material. Whether your father essentially passed on his X chromosome to you, making you female, unless, again, you've got a mutation, or whether he passed on the Y chromosome to you, and thus you are male. That's what it boils down to. There are 2 genders. The roles are completely malleable. You could envision a society in which women do all of the things that our Western societies tend to relegate to maleness, and in which men do the things that we typically regard as feminine. Because it's so malleable, because none of those are core tenets of our biology, yeah, you could do that. It stems from core biology. Here's the other thing. With neural development, the development of the brain, the physical body to some extent. Males tend to be physically larger. They tend to be physically more aggressive. They have thus certain roles that are more central to maleness. What the left calls toxic masculinity. Oh, men, they're more likely to fight or they go to war or something. Those are more natural offshoots of actual biological gender, actual sex. Sex is literally the organ that you happen to have. Gender is the chromosomal compilation from which you're built, XX or XY or whatever. Gender roles are totally different. Everything outside of that very central core that directly offshoots from biology is totally a choice that cultures happen to make. It's totally a choice. Depending on how free the culture is, either individuals make those choices, or they're sort of made for them by the culture. You go to the Middle East or something, gender roles are pretty strictly enforced. The woman shall wear a burqa. The man shall do the driving. The man shall do the working. The women shall produce and care for children. That sort of stuff. In the Western world, it's different. In the Western world, we say, well, ultimately they can choose. There are certain things that we regard as funny if they're associated with either a male or a female because they're well outside of the traditional roles, but those roles are malleable too. They've been changing all the time. You go back maybe a few centuries, the way in which men and women acted was totally different. And different cultures had people acting differently. Men within, like, Mesoamerican culture, many of those cultures, not all of them, but many of them, the men would hunt, maybe build a teepee. The women did all the farming. The sort of work the earlier Europeans that came over, they were astonished. They're like, oh, you've got your women working on the farms. And there was one Native American, I think early 20th century, late 1800s, somewhere around there, who was remarking about how the white man was really stupid because he changed the culture up, and he could have had the women doing all the work and just gone off and hunted all day and then gotten like drunk and then had sex all night, and it would have been a great life for all the men. And then the European men, actually, they were the ones that did more of the physical brute labor. And the Native Americans thought that was very, very funny at the time. So that's all cultural. It just depends on how the culture happens to develop. But that doesn't mean that gender itself is malleable. It's not. There may come a day, far in the future, century from now, century and a half, something, where we have the ability to genetically overhaul an individual so that someone who is XX, who's female, can gain the Y chromosome, become a fully functioning male. or where someone who's male can gain an extra X chromosome and become a fully functioning female, something like that. There may come a time where that's possible. Certainly we have more or less now the technology to choose the gender of an offspring. Whether that's, again, an ethical idea or not remains to be seen. More debates to be had. I'm iffy about it, at least myself. You know, sort of the designer baby thing. Oh yeah, we want our kid to have like green eyes and blonde hair and be like 6'6" or something like that. Oh, we want him to be a genius, so give him this gene. I don't know how I feel about that. I think that's dangerous territory myself. Although it comes with some ethno-nationalist connotations, I suppose. So there are some people who, in their short-mindedness, support it without realizing the real ramifications of the choice that it would give people. But right now, as of our technology today, even if a person transgenders themselves, they still remain part of that original gender. They shouldn't be discriminated against for choosing to alter themselves. They shouldn't be discriminated against. They should, especially at the government or public works level. If you happen to not like transgendered individuals, that's different. That's your own personal choice. But as far as governments, as far as states and their edifices that are taking any public funding, they should not be able to discriminate against transgendered individuals or people who say, well, I'm on the gender spectrum somewhere in the middle, I'm like non-binary or something. Who fucking cares if they want to be non-binary? It's not hurting you. It's not affecting your life. So what, your coworker's non-binary? Who cares? Just do your work. Leave them alone. They certainly shouldn't be harmed for it. If you want to find cultures that really truly discriminate, by the way, against people who would consider themselves non-binary or transgendered, more or less you're looking at like the theocratic third world. You're not looking at Western culture. Although there is one interesting facet here. There's one example that deviates far from that norm, and that's actually Iran. In the nation of Iran, if you're a homosexual, that itself, being gay is not illegal in Iran, by the way. It might be frowned upon, but it's not illegal. Acting upon it, of course, you get killed. But you can transgender yourself and then have what would be generally considered a normal, although sterile, relationship. It's actually legal to do that in Iran. They're actually ahead of parts of the Western world when it comes to recognizing the rights of homosexuals and transgendered individuals, at least on that token. And so long as they're willing to get a sex change, of course. Yeah, that would be my thoughts on it. Bill Nye knows that he's lying straight up to his audience when he claims there's a gender spectrum. There's no gender spectrum, there are two genders. And then there are people with mutations. Sex is the organs, the physical form in the reproductive sense. Gender is the biological form at its core. Gender roles are what exist on a spectrum. But really, the left should be arguing for just why are those roles real in the first place. But that would destroy their arguments, because then they couldn't make such happy arguments as men are more aggressive, we need gun control. Or men are less smart than women in this field. Or women are discriminated against in this element of culture, they're paid less or something. They wouldn't be able to make those arguments because they'd be abolishing the very concept of giving that gender spectrum, as far as the roles go, as far as the cultural side, importance. So they can't do that. And that's really what Bill Nye is getting at. He's trying to get his audience to conflate gender roles, the cultural side of it, with biology. Which means he's ignoring the existence of sex chromosomes to begin with. Now, you can take whatever moral arguments from this that you want. I choose not to make any. I don't care what people do. It's the same as the drug argument. Okay, maybe marijuana is kind of bad for you. Maybe it's kind of good for you. Maybe who cares? Maybe, maybe legalizing certain drugs would cause, some sort of public health problems. But I don't care. Other people will be choosing to. I'm not going to do them just because they're legal to do. I can make my own friggin' decisions. I'm not some thought slave, some sheep that's going to get manipulated by this. They then come out, some scientific apparatuses, and say, well, there are people who are choosing to live as non-binary, transgendered individuals, essentially now because they see it as hip or cool. This has been happening with homosexuality and straightness for a long time. For a very long time, people, psychologically speaking, they could make the choice to live, literally, a choice to live the gay or lesbian lifestyle, or to choose to act bisexually, or choose to cross-dress, or they could choose to act straight if they had homosexual tendencies. Those are choices people make. Then there's the biological side again. I'm willing to admit one other thing of import here that I think needs to be said. There is every likelihood that through some combination of nature and nurture, some people who are biologically male do have a mentality that drives them very strongly to act those female roles, to want to, act as a female, and vice versa. That is definitely true. Epigenetics alone can explain that. But that has nothing to do with chromosomes. It has nothing to do with gender. Again, it's largely cultural and behavioral in that sense. It can derive from biology. But it itself is not directly biological, as in the sex chromosomes. Has nothing to do with them. It could be the result of some mutation. It could be the result of upbringing. Sometimes it's the result of choice. Those things that people choose to do, if it is harming nobody else, if somebody chooses to cross-dress, it's not hurting me. It's not hurting you. You shouldn't really have a problem with it. You can find it odd. You can chuckle at it. I don't see anything wrong with you ridiculing them for choosing to do so. But to extend that to public discrimination or harassment or certainly physical violence, yeah, it's clearly wrong. They're still my fellow Americans if they're living here, and I don't have a problem with them. It's like Caitlyn Jenner. Who cares? I'm not going to give Jenner brownie points, by the way, for, he came out as transgender. A lot of other people did before you, and they didn't have the backing of a really powerful family name and a lot of wealth. They had to actually muddle through it and work to get what they wanted. You really didn't, honestly. You just chose to be closeted because you were afraid. I'm not going to give you brownie points for that, and I don't even have a problem with Caitlyn Jenner. But at the core, still has a Y chromosome and is still, biologically speaking, a male. Sex change, yes. Hormones, yes. Acts female roles, yes. Nothing wrong with that. Shouldn't be any form of discrimination against it. But still with a Y chromosome. And that needs to be kept in mind. It does have importance. Are we going to start denying the very importance of biology? Are we going to start ignoring the existence of chromosomes? Oh, genetics. Fuck that shit. It doesn't matter. It's all about people choosing to be what they want to be. Well, I can declare myself to be a dragon. It doesn't make it so. It doesn't cause it to spring into existence. Unless I want to completely warp my genetics, I'm not going to achieve anything close to it. I can get all the body modifications I want. I can get little bits of plastic embedded under my flesh, make it look like I have scales. I can get tattooed all over head to toe green so that it looks like I'm kind of dragonish. I can get my tongue forked. I can have my teeth sharpened. I can have my eyes literally tattooed a different color. I can do all sorts of things. I have whisker implants and, turn myself into a cat, turn myself into a dog, whatever I happen to want. But it doesn't make me one. It just means there's a semblance of those aspects that I happen to choose to want to emulate. For some people, it's more of a driving urge. For other people, it's really more of just an interesting choice that they make. And I don't hold it against them. If they're doing what they're supposed to do, they're not hurting me, why the hell would I care? Doesn't matter if someone's transgendered. I've known transgendered people. Never had a problem with them. Who cares? Who cares if what they choose to wear, what hormones they want to inject? It's no different than anything else they choose to do. It doesn't have any impact on your life. It doesn't have any impact on my life. Worrying about it's not going to change it anyway. If you have some deep-seated moral bias against it, who cares? But to relegate it to a spectrum that doesn't even exist, using roles that the left itself largely wants to do away with in some cases, it's pretty ridiculous. That's about all. Peace out.